Hello everyone, it's Tatar here, Yom Tov, and welcome to our second midweek folk tales. Hope you're all doing well this evening. And this week, because last week I started you with something that you hadn't heard of before, there was a Norwegian folk tale and then one from Wales. This week I've decided to go for something a little bit more traditional. And I've found two versions of Little Red Riding Hood, one by the brothers Grimm and the other one by Roald Dahl. And then if we can squeeze it in, I'd like to read you an all-time children's favourite, which is Roald Dahl's version of the Three Little Pigs. I wasn't sure whether to do these or Snow White. So if you want me to do Snow White, an alternate version of Snow White, I can do that for you next week. Or you can let me know in the comments if you want me to find something that's less well known and more worldwide. But I thought if we could try something new one week and then something a little bit more traditional the next week. You know, that's my thought anyway. But you always must guide me, so please let me know in the comments what you'd like me to do. So this week, instead of reading from the laptop, I've actually got a book called Classic Fairy Tales by Maria, edited by Maria Tatar. So it's from this book that I'm going to be reading to you this week. So please forgive me if I've got to keep looking at the page, but I'll try and engage as much as I can. So, are we all sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. This story is by the Brothers Grimm and called Little Red Cap. Once upon a time, there was a dear little girl. If you set eyes on her, you could not but love her. The person who loved her most of all was her grandmother, and she could never give the child enough. Once she made her a cap of red velvet, and since it was so becoming and she wanted to wear it all the time, everyone called her Little Red Cap. One day, her mother said to her, "Look, Little Red Cap, here's a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother, because she's feeling ill and a bit weak, and they'll give her strength. You'd better start now before it gets too hot, and when you're out in the woods, walk properly and don't stray from the path. Otherwise you'll fall and you'll break the glass, and there'll be nothing for grandmother. And when you enter a room, don't forget to say good morning, and don't go peeping in all the corners of the room." "I'll do just as you say," Little Red Cap promised her mother. Grandmother lived deep in the woods, half an hour's walk from the village. No sooner had Little Red Cap set foot in the forest than she met the wolf. Little Red Cap had no idea what a wicked beast he was, and so she wasn't in the least afraid of him. "Good morning, Little Red Cap," he said. "Thank you kindly, Wolf." "Where are you headed so early in the morning, Little Red Cap?" "To my grandmother's." "Well, what's that you've got under your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday we baked, and grandmother, who is sick and feels weak, needs something to make her feel better." "So, where does your grandmother live, Little Red Cap?" "It's another quarter of an hour's walk into the woods. Her house is right under 3 large oak trees. You must know the place from the hazel hedges near it," said Little Red Cap. The wolf thought to himself, "That tender young thing will make a dainty morsel. She'll be even tastier than the old woman. If you're really crafty, you'll get them both." So he walked for a while beside Little Redcap, and then he said, "Little Redcap, have you seen the beautiful flowers all about? Why don't you look around for a while? I don't think you've even noticed how sweetly the birds are singing. You are walking along as if you were on the way to school, and yet it's so heavenly out here in the woods." Well, Little Redcap opened her eyes wide and saw how the sunbeams were dancing this way and that through the trees, and how there were beautiful flowers all around her. She thought to herself, "If you bring a fresh bouquet to Grandmother, she'll be overjoyed. It's still so early in the morning. I'm sure to get there in plenty of time." So she left the path and ran off into the woods looking for flowers. And as soon as she picked one, she saw an even more beautiful one somewhere else, and she went after that. So she ended up going deeper and deeper into the woods. The wolf went straight to Grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" "Little Redcap. I've brought some cake and wine. Open the door." "Just raise the latch," Grandmother called out. "I'm too weak to get out of bed." The wolf raised the latch and the door swung wide open. Without saying a word, he went straight to Grandmother's bed and gobbled her up. Then he put on her clothes and her nightcap, lay down in her bed and drew the curtains. Meanwhile, Little Redcap had been running around looking for flowers, and when she finally had so many she couldn't carry them all, she suddenly remembered Grandmother and set off again to the path to find her house. Well, she was really surprised to find the door wide open, and when she stepped into the house, she had a strange feeling that she thought to herself, "Oh my goodness, I'm usually so glad to be at Grandmother's, but today I feel so nervous." Well, she called out a greeting, but there was no answer. Then she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. Grandmother was lying there with her nightcap pulled down over her face. She looked very strange. "Oh, Grandmother, what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with." "Oh, Grandmother, what big eyes you have." "The better to see you with." "Oh, Grandmother, what big hands you have." "The better to grab you with." "Oh, Grandmother, what a big scary mouth you have." "The better to eat you with." And no sooner had the wolf spoken these words than he leapt out of the bed and gobbled up poor Little Redcap. Well, that's what you get for asking too many questions, isn't it, really? You know, sorry, that's an aside there. Once the wolf had satisfied his desires, he lay down again in bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loudly. A huntsman happened to be passing by the house, and he thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring. It doesn't sound like her. You better go and check and see what's wrong." Well, he walked into the house, and when he got to the bed, he saw the wolf was lying in it. "I found you at last, you old sinner," he said. "I've been after you for a while now." So he pulled out his musket and was about to take aim when he realised the wolf might have eaten Grandmother and that she could still be saved. So instead of firing, he took out a pair of scissors and began cutting open the belly of the sleeping wolf. After making a few snips, he could see a red cap faintly. After making a few more cuts, the girl jumped out crying, "Oh, how terrified I was! It was so dark in the wolf's belly." Yeah, love, there's no windows. And then the little grandmother found her way out alive, though she could hardly breathe. Little Red Cap quickly fetched some large stones and filled the wolf's belly with them, and when he awoke, he was about to bound off, but the stones were so heavy that his legs collapsed down beneath him and he fell down dead. Wonder why he didn't wake up when they were cutting his stomach open. All three were overjoyed. The huntsman skinned the wolf and went home with the pelt. Grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine, and Little Red Cap recovered her health. Little Red Cap thought to herself, never again will you stray from the path and go into the woods when your mother forbade it. Well, there's also a story about another wolf who met Little Red Cap on the way to grandmother's as she was taking her some cakes. The wolf tried to divert her from the path, but Little Red Cap was on her guard and kept on going. She told her grandmother that she had met the wolf and that he greeted her, but he had looked at her in such an evil way that if we hadn't been out in the open, he would have gobbled me right up. Well then, said grandmother, we'll just lock that door so he can't get in. Well, not much later, the wolf knocked at the door and called out, open the door, grandmother. It's Little Red Cap. Oh, sorry. Open the door, grandmother. Forgot who was supposed to be there. It's Little Red Cap. I'm bringing you some cakes. The two kept quiet and didn't open the door. Then old Greyhead circled the house a few times. Apparently that's his name, Greyhead. It's funny how they don't tell you until nearly the end. And he finally jumped up on the roof. He was planning on waiting until Little Red Cap went home. But he was going to creep up after her and gobble her up in the dark. But grandmother guessed what he had on his mind, because she was a mind reader. There was a big stone trough in front of the house. She said to the child, here's a bucket. Yesterday I cooked some sausages. Take the water in which they were boiled and pour it into the trough. Well, Little Red Cap kept carrying water until that big trough was completely full. The smell of those sausages reached the wolf's nostrils. His neck was stretched out so long from sniffing and looking around him that he lost his balance and began to slide down. He went right down the roof into the trough and was drowned. Little Red Cap walked home cheerfully, and nobody did her any harm, because it got round very, very quickly that if you're a wolf, her grandmother would boil them in sausage water, and I think that most wolves are allergic to being boiled in sausage water. I don't know when the last time I heard of wolves being boiled in sausage water, but it's amazing the things you learn all the time, you know. And this one's out of books, not out the internet. Anyway, I'm leading on now to our next version of Little Red Riding Hood. But this one's by Roald Dahl, who left us in 1990. Wouldn't you believe it, that it would be so long? So, Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. This is in rhyme. As soon as the wolf began to feel that he would like a decent meal, he went and knocked on Grandma's door. When Grandma opened it, she saw the sharp white teeth, the horrid grin, and Wolfie said, "May I come in?" Poor Grandmama was terrified. He's going to eat me up," she cried. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. Gee, what size mouths have these creatures got? You're talking about something about like a gargantuan crocodile or something, aren't you, really? Or a python that looks like a wolf. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Well, Grandmama was small and tough, and Wolfie wailed, "That's not enough. I haven't yet begun to feel that I've had a decent meal." He ran around the kitchen yelping, I've got to have another helping. Then added with a frightful leer, I'm therefore going to have to wait right here till little Miss Red Riding Hood comes home from walking in the wood. He quickly put on Grandma's clothes. Of course, he hadn't eaten those. And he dressed himself in coat and hat. He put on shoes, and after that, he even brushed and curled his hair. In came the little girl in red. Oh, and he'd sat himself in Grandma's chair. And then popped in the little girl in red. She stopped, she stared, and then she said, "What great big ears you have, Grandma." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," the wolf replied. "What great big eyes you have, Grandma." Said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to see you with, my dear," the wolf replied. He sat there watching her and smiled. He thought, I'm going to eat this child. Compared to with her old grandmama, she's going to taste like caviar. Then Little Red Riding Hood said, "But Grandma, what a lovely great furry coat you have on." "That's wrong," cried the wolf. "Have you forgot to tell me what big teeth I've got?" "Oh, well, no matter what you say, I'm going to eat you anyway." The little girl smiles. One eyelid flickers. She whips a pistol from her knickers. She aims it at the creature's head, and bang, 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 she shoots him dead. A few weeks later in the wood, I came across Miss Riding Hood. But what a change! No cloak of red, no silly hood upon her head. She said, "Hello, and do please note my lovely furry wolfskin coat." And now we're going to follow that with The Three Little Pigs, also by Roald Dahl. Well, the animal I really dig above all others is the pig. Pigs are noble, pigs are clever, pigs are courteous. However, now and then, to break this rule, one meets a pig who is a fool. What, for example, would you say if, strolling through the woods one day, right there in front of you, you saw a pig who'd built his house of straw? The wolf who saw it licked his lips and said, "That pig has had his chips." Little pig, let me come in." "No, no, not by the hairs on my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." Well, the little pig began to pray, but Wolfie blew his house away. He shouted, "Bacon, pork and ham, oh, what a lucky wolf I am." And though he ate the pig quite fast, he carefully kept the tail till last. Wolf wandered on, a trifle bloated. Surprise, surprise, for soon he noted another little house for pigs, and this one had been built of twigs. Little pig, let me come in." "No, no, not by the hairs of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." The wolf said, "Okay, here we go." And then he began to blow and blow. The little pig began to squeal. He cried, "Oh, Wolf, you've had one big meal. Why can't we talk and make a deal?" The wolf replied, "Not on your Nelly." And soon the pig was in his belly. "Two juicy little pigs," Wolf cried. "But still I am not satisfied. I know full well my tummy's bulging, but oh, how I adore indulging." So creeping quietly as a mouse, the wolf approached another house. A house which also had inside a little piggy trying to hide. But this one, piggy number 3, was bright and brainy as could be. No straw for him, no twigs or sticks. This pig had built his house from bricks. "You'll not get me," the piggy cried. "I'll blow you down," the wolf replied. "You'll need," pig said, "a lot of puff, and I don't think you've got enough." Well, wolf huffed and puffed and blew and blew. The house stayed up as good as new. "Well, if I can't blow it down," wolf said, "I'll have to blow it up instead. I'll come back at the dead of night and blow it up with dynamite." Pig cried. "You brute, I might have known." And picking up the telephone, he dialed as quickly as he could the number of Red Riding Hood. "Hello," she said. "Who's speaking, who?" "Oh, hello, Piggy. How do you do?" Pig cried. "I need your help, Miss Hood." "Oh, help me, please. Do you think you could?" "Well, I'll try, of course," Miss Hood replied. "What's on your mind?" "A wolf," Pig cried. "I know you've dealt with wolves before, and now I've got one at my door." "My darling Pig," she said, "my sweet, that's something really up my street. I've just begun to wash my hair, but when it's dry I'll be right there." A short while later, through the wood, came striding brave Miss Riding Hood. The wolf stood there, his eyes ablaze and yellowish like mayonnaise. His teeth were sharp, his gums were raw, and spit was dripping from his jaw. Once more the maiden's eyelid flickers. She draws the pistol from her knickers, and once more she hits the vital spot and kills him with a single shot. Pig, peeping through the window, stood and yelled, "Well done, Miss Riding Hood." "Ah, Piglet, you must never trust young ladies from the upper crust. For now Miss Riding Hood, one notes, not only has 2 wolfskin coats, but when she goes travelling from place to place, she has a great big pigskin case." And those are your stories for this evening. I know we've only got a little bit to go, but I did say we would try and keep these, strictly for half an hour. I think if I do read Snow White to you next week, that's probably going to take up the full half hour. I mean, I found other little stories, like the Frog King and the Frog Princess, and little stories like that. But, they're all fascinating. But you think, well, people are sort of associating them with either Beauty and the Beast, or they put them in with Snow White, and you're never quite sure which story belongs to which one. And I can understand everybody getting confused, because there's one that's linked in with the Beauty and the Beast story genre called The Tiger's Bride. So, and I think that one is originally from India. So it shows you all these things are just all over the world. And when I was looking up Cinderella, there's actually a Chinese version of Cinderella called Hien Sen. And that's the name of the Chinese version of Cinderella, Hien Sen. But it's like the basis is there, but then there's lots of plot twists and turns and things like that, So I'm going to have to really look into, which are the best stories, and, how I can sort of read them for you, how long it's going to take, and hopefully try not to go over our time. But I honestly think that if I do Snow White for you next week, it probably will take up about 25 minutes reading of that story. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to do that for you. Or I can read you Beauty and the Beast. Or if you want, like I said, like I did last week, one about, the troll, and, the other one about the three brothers, then, I'll certainly do what I can, and I'll research for you. But like I said, that I'll get it out yet. I can't fail but get my words out, and not the right way. But I really do hope that you enjoyed this week's stories. And I don't know about you, but especially Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs just take me back when I was learning to read, many, many moons ago now. But also, I remember getting a Disney version on like a cassette tape, and it was this little Disney booklet with a story, and there was all the pictures inside, plus the text. But there was a cassette tape that went with it, and I can remember, the music to this day. And I remember, my little girl being about, oh goodness me, I got our first library ticket when she was 4 weeks old, because, I'm a voracious reader myself. And I remember sort of this newborn baby being taken down to the library and choosing books for her, like the Tiger Who Came to Tea, and, the Very Hungry Caterpillar, starting off with things like that. And then me tucking her into the crook of my arm, and then reading Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs and Snow White and things like that to her when she was a very little girl. So, yeah, they were very good memories. They always invoke very happy memories for me. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Please let me know what you thought about tonight's stories, and particularly how I read them, or whether I read them any better, or were the ad-libs a bit too much. I'm sorry, sometimes I do that when I'm reading. I'll read something and then I'll look up and talk to myself about something that I've just read. There's nobody in the room with me, but there you have it. So anyway, thank you again for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed tonight's fairy tale, which, as you know, fairy tales are part of folklore. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know which way you want me to go for next week's story, or if you want this to continue, because I'm led by you guys. I will only do what you want me to do. So I look forward to hearing from you in the comments, and we'll get a discussion going. Don't forget that you're never alone, that your all haven is now. We are one big happy family, and we've got a nice little family community going on here. And never forget that you're loved, and in a low moment, put message in a bottle on, and just remember that you do have somewhere to come to when you're not feeling 100%. You've always got us. You're never ever alone. Never again. That'll be a thing of the past for you. So until the next time, if I don't see you before, then I will see our hardcore paranormal fans on Friday, where I've got another story lined up for you this week, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as you enjoyed Death Marriage from last week. So let's see what you think about this week's scary stories. Right, well, good night everybody. and thank you again. Love you. Bye bye.